Of course, it's a cover-up. It's not a fight between number one and number two. It is the fight between number one and the investigations he was doing on one side and the government which was scared of those investigations. That's the fight. And they use that number two for that purpose. The one person who's culpable in all this is the Prime Minister. This kind of CBI being suborned into a chore bazaar of India. Irrespective of what the Supreme Court may decide, maybe they will decide against Verma or for Verma, I would not. But my view certainly is he was given a fixed tenure, and you cannot terminate a tenure like that without going through the process. In this case, you had to consult a body. You didn't consult that body. There is a handyman in the Chief Vigilance Commissioner, and he gives you the opinion you want. And then you say, oh, I'm only acting on the opinion of the CVC. And you have terminated it was a fixed tenure for 2 years. Now, these types of appointments, the tenure can be cut short only as a punishment. Let us say moral turpitude, or that the person has a stroke and is incapable medically of functioning, or he is caught taking a bribe, something that way. You can't contrive a situation through one of your own men. Two men are fighting, so I must remove both of them. Oh, there is a fire in the house, so I must remove the arsonist as well as the firefighter. What kind of logic is this? Even from his petition, in a very guarded way, he has suggested that cases come up in which the investigation would not be in line with what would seem desirable to the powers, and that it takes a lot of courage to stand up to that kind of pressure. Well, that's enough of a hint. And he has said that I will disclose these cases in the court. Now, we don't require much more hint than that to know that his removal has been triggered by the fact of the investigations that were being done under him. An absolutely idiotic, all in capital letters, rationalization has been put out by this blogger, Arun Shourie, saying that no, we have to institutional integrity and fair play. What do? You see, into an organization, you thrust in a person, forcibly you thrust in a person who is himself being examined by that organization. He then starts behaving in a way to create a situation in which he is at loggerheads with other officers. And you say, oh, see, there is so much fighting going on in this organization, I must remove all of them. It's a contrivance. Yeah. And that's the kind of lie which this government spreads. And readers and viewers must be alert to that. So I will not like to talk about the petition. But as you rightly said, in the press conference which we held, we have held 3 press conferences, and in the 3rd press conference, it was certainly that the one person who's culpable in all this is the Prime Minister. Nobody else knew of the decision. That is on record with the statements of Jaishankar, the Foreign Secretary, the statements of the HAL Chairman, the statements of Holland, the statement of Treppier. Everybody, nobody knew. It was only the Prime Minister who took this unilateral decision without following any procedure, any of the prescribed procedures, mandatory procedures. So irrespective of our petition, we have already stated that in a press conference with detailed documentation. They first try to bribe, then they try to frighten everybody from talking about it. And because nobody talks about their dishonesty, they say, see, oh, we are honest. We have eliminated corruption. Because you can't talk about Amit Shah's son, his assets. You can't talk about Amit Shah's cooperative bank. You can't talk about the Gujarat State for Petroleum Exploration Corporation. You can't talk about the links of NIRAV Modi with anybody, Choksi paying the retainers to X, Y or Z. So they are very honest because you can't talk. They have shut your mouth. And the remedy for that is that whenever there is such a case or whenever there is such an injunction by a court that wire can't talk about Jay Shah, well, then 1 lakh people should talk about it. Let us see what the court does. The very courts which have been upholding freedom of speech and talking so highly that this is the foundation of all fundamental rights, let us see what they do about these gag orders. Firstly, I don't know whether it's happening or not. I don't think you and I know the people of India. The word of mouth travels. Secondly, to the extent that it is not happening, the culprit is the media, which has a bone in its mouth and therefore can't bark. That's the problem. It's not fear, it is greed, which is keeping the media silent. And that is why I greatly admire the work of Quint, I admire the work of Wire, I admire the work of the hoax layer, of alt news, of the guerrilla media, of Scroll. Mm-hmm. That's our future. That's where freedom is being preserved in these nooks and corners. I'm sorry to say that I was fooled into not examining what was called the Gujarat model, but actually this is the Gujarat model. No cabinet function there, no cabinet functions here. The state legislature was reduced to impotence and irrelevance. The parliament has been reduced to impotence and irrelevance. The judiciary was suborned. The judiciary is being suborned here. The agencies and the police force were made into private posses and private armies. That's being done here. It's exactly the Gujarat model. But persons like me just shut our eyes to it. It's our great failing. This is the nature of the government. They believe they are right. They believe it to everything, even on opening a police memorial, which was thought of by even Mr. Bajpayee's government. Mr. Modi says that it is God who has willed that he should inaugurate it. So he certainly believes that he is the agent of God in all this. And anybody who convinces himself that he is doing everything for a higher purpose, then does not mind trampling upon anything else. Because everything that he tramples upon is being done for a higher purpose. That's one of the characteristics of the dark triad. That is why they are remorseless, because they have convinced themselves that whatever they are doing is for a higher purpose. So if anybody gets hurt, if any institution suffers, if the country is torn apart, it's all for a higher purpose.